Hello, I'm Kayla, and today I'm going to be giving a workshop on creating a leaderboard for our Hack Invaders event. So, for our event, we're focusing on creating retro style games or kind of revamping or updating them. So, an aspect that could be very important is being able to create a leaderboard that works for all of the players of your game. So before we get started, I just wanted to show you guys the link to the slides and the link to the GitHub if you want to look at the slides after this workshop, or if you want to look at any of the demo code or at the READMEs for all of the workshops for this event. Okay, so what is our agenda for this workshop today? So we're going to start off with why are we even learning how to build a leaderboard? And then we're going to go over how to set up your database using MongoDB, how to use Postman when dealing with backend stuff, how to connect React to your backend, and we'll be showing a final demo of coding everything up for your leaderboard to work and showing the game as a final result. And first of all, we're going to start with some motivation and the focus of our workshop. So, something you may be thinking is, I thought this was an AI focused hackathon. Why do I need to learn how to create a leaderboard? Like, can't I just tell my AI agent to do everything for me? Well, for the motivation for this, sometimes AI can only take you so far, so it's very useful to know how to use other tools to connect to your backend and know how the architecture of your game works. And this doesn't just apply to leaderboards. This is just one example. There's going to be a lot of different things where you might want to have a shared state of data or just store data in general. And for anything like that, you're going to want to know how to use other tools and know a little bit of database management because those are things that are less contained within just like your IDE. And so you would want to know how that works so you could do it yourself and not rely on AI for everything. And also, leaderboards can be important for your game because you want to remember if you're that top player, you want to have everyone know that. And, sometimes you got to put yourself first. So I put myself first on this leaderboard, and then everyone who attends hack events, and then everyone else. Okay, we're just going to do a quick workshop demo on the game that we're going to be working with today. And the game is actually going to be Pac-Man, which is a very classic retro game that I think everyone knows about. And for this workshop, we're actually going to be starting off on a baseline of a built-out Pac-Man game. And this is kind of where the vibe coding and using AI comes in because for this demo, I use AI to help me just build out the front end because I think once you have learned the front end, you can just like churn it out really quickly with AI. But I do recommend if you're not familiar at all to still learn that. And Hack has a lot of workshops on front end if you're interested in it. But yes, we're doing Pac-Man, and I was able to get this super cute looking Pac-Man game that we'll be using today. And I also had it create a leaderboard screen, but it just has the front end right now. So we have our Hack Arcade Pac-Man game, and I just inputted some random data, some random players and scores for this leaderboard right now. So we actually have this Pac-Man game right here, and it's starting with a screen that's asking for your player name. So I can say my name is Kayla, and I think there might already be some instances of Kayla on the leaderboard, but I can play a game of Pac-Man. I don't want this to go on too long, so maybe I should die soon. Oh, except the ghosts are blue and I can't die. Um, okay. So, oh no, game over. I died. So we can click and we go to our leaderboard, and as we can see, oh great, I've been added to this leaderboard. That's that's awesome. It seems like this is kind of working already. But let's play again. Let's remember that this is Kayla and my score is at 740 right now. Um, okay. I realize that this isn't the best demo right now because I'm scoring very lowly, but let's just go back to the slides to show off my point. If I did score higher than 5,000, then it wouldn't matter. Like if I were to score somewhere between, let's say, 5 and 6, and let's say I score number one the time after that, my run that scored between 5 and 6 on this leaderboard would not be saved. And that's because all that we started off with right now and that we've implemented is the front end of our Pac-Man game. So my point that I was trying to make, except it would take too long for me to score that highly in Pac-Man, but our leaderboard is going to reset every time in terms of even if me as a player scores very highly, like one or two, I'll only have one saved score on the leaderboard, and my run from like 2 games ago would not be saved. And that is not what we want. We want our scores to persist. So we want to fix that. And as you can see, something that's actually in our code is we've actually hard coded right now, just to have it show up on the front end. We've hard coded some data because we have no like way of storing or managing data besides this at the very moment. So we have just this 7 or so rows of data that are just inputted into our leaderboard front end right now automatically. And this on the bottom is showing us that our score would be like we would run over our score every time we play. We're not going to be able to get 2 scores of the same player on the leaderboard right now. So the state resets and our hard-coded data never changes. So our database will solve this, and we need to just implement some backend to fix this problem. So something to think about in terms of the architecture of what we're trying to do is right now we just have the front end, but we want to add the back end portion and the database portion. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using MongoDB. So we're going to have this database that is going to be the thing that's actually storing the data, but we can't just have this like database directly connect with our React application, or in other words, the client, because we don't want to have anything relating to our data be public, because front end is kind of more like it's more client facing. So, for example, the React will run in someone's browser because our Pac-Man game is a React app. So, we don't want any of our data to accidentally be exposed because that means it could technically be tampered with, and we don't want, someone to be enraged by how bad they are at Pac-Man and change the number one score to be their name or something like that. So that's why we don't have React connecting directly with MongoDB, and instead we have this kind of middle section of our architecture, which acts as the backend. And for us, we'll actually be using Express to do that. That's kind of like a middle part of it. And and yeah, so this is kind of the picture that you should think of with the database like permanently acting as the data hub, data storage, and The client is the actual React application or the front end, and then the back end is kind of what helps with the server side code and helps connect the two. Okay, so if you haven't used MongoDB before, it's a very simple and straightforward way to create a database. So if you don't have one, you can make an account with MongoDB, and within that, you can create your account slash cluster. Um, and within that, you can make a database. For our case, this is going to be the container for all of the game's data. And then within that, we're going to make a collection called Leaderboard, which in this demo will be the group of leaderboard score documents. So it's going to look like this. And oops, in general, this is what my leaderboard collection looks like on MongoDB. Uh, right now, it has some uh items in here, but when you go make your account in MongoDB, you can just open up your screen, I guess, and you can make kind of a project and a cluster within it, and then a database and a collection. So if you wanted to create a new one, you can click create cluster, and then within that you can create your database and collection. But I'm just going to open my collection that I made here. Here's my database, Pacman, and my leaderboard collection within it. And if you are doing this for the first time, it's quite self-explanatory, but yeah. So for now, I'm just going to go to the one that I've already made. But if you get confused, there are videos online, or you could definitely ask any hack officer. But this is what it looks like. And maybe I can actually delete some of these, but this is our data entries, and these are called documents. So this is the example of a score document within our leaderboard, and we're just calling it a score document because that's the purpose of our data. We want to store the top scores and such. So for the kind of structure that I've chosen to use, we have an ID, an object ID, which is just pretty standard to have in order to kind of have a key to access every entry uniquely. And then we keep track of the score that was scored from the game. We keep track when it was created. We keep track of the date because we want to display the date on the leaderboard as well. And then finally, we keep track of the player who scored this score. So, pretty self-explanatory. And then how to connect with MongoDB. So what you're going to want to do is you need to get your connection string. So this is how your code slash React app will be able to talk with your database, because obviously we want to be able to use the stored data in our MongoDB database for our application. And this connection string is kind of how that is done. But this is kind of a sensitive thing. It's kind of like a key. So you don't want to, I guess, make it visible in your code. So what is typically done is you will put any like, I guess, more sensitive information in a .env file. and then you'll put .env in get ignore. So you're going to get your um, connection string from MongoDB. I am not going to show my personal MongoDB string right now because, like I said, you don't want to just like be sharing that out with everyone. But that's actually going to be when you're trying to create a new project or cluster or collection, you're going to see an option that is saying like if you want to just get your um MongoDB key or something or string. And that's if you typically, I think it's for everything, but I chose to use it with Node.js and it'll just give you your string that you can copy. So in our code, this is my like actual .env, but I created just an example one because this is obviously just a filler of what this would look like. It's not my actual string, but you will just set up with this like MongoDB URI, and then you will just copy and paste the MongoDB string that was given to you because that will be what connects with your cluster and your database. So, and then I also just added like the port and client origin, my database name, and my collection name here. And in our get ignore, I also just added like .env so that my key would not be added if I wanted to push this to GitHub or something. And obviously, if this was not in get ignore, then people could just go into my .env file and find my MongoDB key. So you always want to make sure to include .env in your git ignore because it'll essentially, like Git will essentially ignore this file and kind of hide it for you to keep your information safe. So that is something very important to keep in mind. And yes, never put your secrets in, I guess, just like visible code because those are secrets you want to keep. Um, so yeah, next we want to start implementing our backend now that we have our database set up. So I'm just gonna start using this code we have here to start demoing. So we have our components with just like all of our screens here. We do have a data folder with, like I showed you, this hard-coded data, and we have stuff to make our game work and just other classic files. So something that we are missing so far, though, that I'm going to add is a oh, a backend folder. Oh God, I do not want it in here. And with a backend folder, you can kind of like modularize it and separate out what you want to do with it. But for now, we're just going to make one server file that we're going to kind of put everything in. So for now, we want to start off by importing Express and then just doing kind of somewhat boilerplate to just get us started and get our requests ready, I suppose. So, okay, I'm adding this API slash API slash health. This is just going to be a request, and we just are going to have it return um just like a message, which okay, it's like wanting me to change it to this, which sure. It could be whatever. This is just to make sure that our backend is connected and it's working. Um, so yes, what we can do to check that is use an application called Postman. And Postman is really useful when you're working with backend code. So we can actually go to this Postman that I've made already. Um, but okay, for the sake of showing you, I can make a new one. So let's just call this one Pacman demo. And this is because we want to be using something called endpoints when working with backend. And what endpoints are is that they are a URL that the front end can call to ask the backend to do something. And I use the word URL because that is quite literally what they look like, as you can see here with the slashes and stuff. And it's just something that I think this meme is kind of nice because you, as a front end, can just like use this string of letters and slashes to call kind of like a task or like a thing that you want the back end to do. And you can just like, the front end can just be like, okay, the back end's going to do it for us. So, for example, if we want to use a get request, which a get request is when you want to, I guess, literally like get something, like you want to get the data from the back end. For leaderboard, in our case, we're just using API/leaderboard because we're only going to be using two requests for our demo today. But what this is basically saying is the front end is asking the back end, like, back end, please get all of the leaderboard scores, um, so that it could display the leaderboard screen. And this post is more like updating the database. So this one is being like, it's going to give in something, like give in data to the backend and be like, hey, could you save this new data and new score in our leaderboard like collection? So that is what these endpoints are going to do and we what they're going to look like. And this is relevant for Postman because that's like what Postman's going to help you out with. It's going to help you out with, you know, when you want to make sure that your endpoints are working because you want to incrementally test these so you're not just like writing code and then you test things and then nothing works because sometimes you need to implement an endpoint before doing another one, and if that first one doesn't work then nothing's going to work. So that's why Postman's really nice because you can test it out. So here you can see we have this new collection in it, our Pacman demo, and I can add a request. So I'm going to use a get request and I'm just going to name it health. And it's actually already here because I have this old Pacman one here, but we're just going to be doing this with this is the endpoint we defined in our code here, API health. And we also defined our port to be here. So this should just call this endpoint and we define the result to return JSON of a message. So this should work. This should work as long as we run our actual backend. So another thing to keep in mind is you do need to run your backend separately. I sometimes forget to do this myself, so just remember that if things aren't working, that could be like an issue. So we can go here and npm run dev backend. And also the reason this works is actually because I defined this dev backend command in the scripts that we also need to actually have um, use the port we defined and make sure that it's listening for it to be used. So now that this is here, it should work. Okay, yeah. So as we can see, the result is going to be, or the response is the message server is running, which we did define here. So now this is great because we know that our code is working and that things are being connected. So this is great. Now we can just add some more things we need. Um, we're just going to need this pores import and we're going to use it. And this is just something that lets the front end talk to the back end during local development. So it's just something we want to add. And just want to do this, but for the local host we're running on, then we also want to make sure we use express.json, which just lets express or lets the backend read JSON from post requests because that's how you give data through JSON. So, okay, this is great. Now we're going to add more things. We're going to import this as well and import this. Right now, we're just setting up some code for our MongoDB connection to work. Okay. We also defined a function, an async function for get leaderboard collection, which is just going to connect with our Mongo client and return the leaderboard collection from the Pacman database. Okay. And then now to get some like actual things going on here, let's do our API leaderboard get request. So we're just going to set this as a get for this endpoint, and we are going to just want to await the leaderboard collection. So we want it to give us access to the leaderboard. And then we're going to get the entries and we want to sort it from highest to lowest. And then if someone's score is the same, we're going to then sort it by when the score was scored, like when it was created at. And then we're going to limit the number of scores to 8 because that's how many we want to show on our leaderboard. And we're just going to return all of these entries or these 8 entries as the response. So with that, I'm pretty sure we can check that this works with Postman as well. So we're going to add another request, and this is also going to be a GET request. And we're getting leaderboard entries, so our GET request with API leaderboard. If we send this, then we can totally check that this is what's in our database. And we can also totally check that this is in order of highest score to lowest score, and these two are the same. So we can also check it's in the order of when it was created. Okay, so that works great. And now we want to do our post request. So we're going to start it kind of the same. Um, and then we're going to destructure from the request body because it's going to give us the player name and the score of whoever just scored. And we want to make this check that if the request's like data is not in the correct form of a string and a number, then we want to make it an invalid input. Then we're going to do the same thing where we get the leaderboard collection with storing it in collection and awaiting it. And then we're going to want to um, do an insert one on this collection because again, we want to be adding data to our database this time. So what we're going to do is it's called initials, but we can actually just include the entire player name, just permit, and then we want to add score. Just going to round it. And then again, it's called title, but we actually just want to um, make it into a date. And then we want to created at, and yes. And then this is um it's not a GET request, so there's not really going to be an important body of the response, but you can just like set the status so it indicates that it was good and it was successful, and you can return with entry added successfully because that's more just for you to check. So again, we can go back to Postman and do our check. We can add a request. Note that this time, I'm just gonna call it post because I'm lazy. This time we want to make this a post request. Nope, that is not it. Um, and it has the same name, but it's a post request. So in this, because it's a post request, we need to give it data to add to our database. So we actually want to go to body and we can go to raw. And so we need to define the entries because we still need it to update the leaderboard and show the entries. And it'll just be the same as before. And then our result can return the entries. So this one is destructuring player name and score. So we have to give in player name and score. So if we want to have Pacman score 1230, we can send it and it'll be added. And as we can see, Pacman has been added here on this day, etc., etc. And the rest of the entries are updated accordingly. So this is awesome. We've gotten our GET request and POST request to both work. The last thing to take note of is I do have some um, front end functions that allow me to connect with the front end. So the first one is this fetch leaderboard entries one. This is a way to, like I was talking about earlier, use the front end to call these APIs or endpoints to have the back end do some stuff for you. So this one is like using the fetch keyword and it's fetching um, this. So it's going to get the leaderboard entries for the front end. And this function is going to be used in our app.tsx with the use effect keyword. And all these together will be able to set the entries of our leaderboard front end. And something similar, we also have a save leaderboard entry function, and this is again going to fetch this. We define the method as post, define content type as JSON because that's what we're using for all of this. And this is also going to use our endpoint in within our front end. So we would have fixed our our game so that now we can play and get our score saved how many times we want. And if we wanted to open a new tab, I want to be a new player, I can join as a new player. I can see everyone's scores that have already been here, and I can be like, okay, I want to beat everyone, so let me give it a go. And I don't know. I'm playing Pac-Man. Okay, again, want to die at this point. Um, okay. I played and I'm a new player and my score is now in this leaderboard. So everything works as expected. We have all of our scores being saved in our database and our leaderboard is working perfectly. So that is the end of the workshop. Thank you for watching and definitely excited to see all of the leaderboard stuff that you can create in the future as well. Thank you.